It was a little past 11 when the house finally went quiet. The rain had been falling since evening, tapping softly against the kitchen window, the kind of sound that usually made me feel safe. I was sitting in my armchair, knitting half a scarf I'd probably never finish, when the phone on the side table began to ring. At first, I thought it was a wrong number. No one ever calls that late. Not anymore. But when I reached over and saw the name glowing on the screen, my breath caught halfway in my chest. Max, I froze. My heart started to race in that strange mix of joy and panic, the way it does when something precious returns just as you've taught yourself to live without it. It had been almost 5 months since we last spoke. 5 long, aching months since that argument, since the day I told him I felt like a stranger in his life, and he said, "Mom, you wouldn't understand." I stared at the screen as the ringing went on. My hand trembled over the phone. What if he needed something? What if he was in trouble? What if it was just an accident, a pocket dial, and answering would only remind him of all the distance between us? The rain outside grew louder. I finally pressed the green button. My voice came out small, unsure. "Hello?" There was a pause. A kind of silence that has weight to it, heavy, tender, and filled with everything we hadn't said. Then I heard his voice. Soft, tired. "Mom. Are you still awake?" And just like that, the walls I had built inside me began to crumble. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Hearing his voice after so long. It felt like standing in a warm patch of sunlight after months of winter. My throat tightened as I whispered, "Of course, Max. I'm awake." He sighed, that familiar, low sigh he used to make as a boy when he'd scraped his knee and didn't want me to see him cry. But now it sounded heavier. Older. "I didn't mean to call so late," he said. "I just didn't know who else to talk to." Those words hit me right in the heart. My son, the same boy who once thought I could fix anything with a bandage and a kiss, now couldn't even find the words to tell me what was wrong. I wanted to reach through the phone, to hold him the way I used to when his world fell apart over broken toys or lost friends. But time changes everything, doesn't it? "It's all right, sweetheart," I said softly. "Tell me what's going on." There was a pause, then a shaky breath. "It's Lena," he finally said. "We had a fight. A bad one." I could feel my stomach twist. I'd always known their marriage wasn't easy, Lena's sharp tone, her endless complaints about how I spoiled Max with too much kindness. But I stayed quiet, because a mother's silence often keeps the peace her heart can't bear to lose. He continued, his voice breaking. "She said she's leaving. She took her things, Mom. I don't even know where she went." My heart ached for him, my boy, my grown man who sounded like that lost child again. "Oh, Max," I whispered, my eyes stinging. "I'm so sorry." For a moment, neither of us said anything. Just the soft hum of the rain and the quiet sound of breathing on both sides of the line, two hearts trying to find each other again through the static of time and pride. I sat there in the dim light of my living room, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the rain running down the window like silver threads. Max's breathing on the other end was uneven, fragile, the kind that comes when someone's trying hard not to fall apart. "Mom," he said after a long pause, "I don't know what to do. Everything's just falling apart." I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. For years, I'd prayed for this, not his pain, but the sound of his voice, the chance to be his mother again. But now that it had come, it hurt more than I could have ever imagined. "Max," I said softly, "you don't have to have all the answers right now. Sometimes life just breaks for a while before it finds its way again." He gave a small laugh, half bitter, half broken. You always make it sound so easy, Mom. You always did. I smiled sadly. No, darling. It's never easy. I just learned to keep walking, even when my heart was tired. There was silence again. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. Lena told me. She thinks you never liked her. The words sliced through the quiet like a knife. I felt a lump form in my throat. I'd always tried to be kind, even when I didn't agree with her ways. That's not true, I managed to say. I wanted her to be happy with you. I wanted you both to be happy. He didn't respond right away, and that silence spoke volumes. A mother's love doesn't stop. But it does bend under the weight of distance and misunderstanding. Max, I whispered, you know I love you, right? His voice cracked. I know, Mom. I just forgot how much I missed hearing it. When the call ended, I sat in that quiet room for a long time, holding my phone close like it still carried his heartbeat. Sometimes, the calls we never expect are the ones our souls have been waiting for all along. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying Max's voice in my mind, that fragile mix of regret and exhaustion. The sound of my boy, who once ran through the kitchen laughing with chocolate on his face, now sounding so lost. I sat by the window, wrapped in Dan's old flannel blanket, the one he used to wear when we'd sit on the porch watching summer storms. It still smelled faintly of cedar and soap, and somehow, comfort. Dan, I whispered into the quiet, our boy called tonight. If love could echo through time, I swear I could almost feel him listening. It's strange how grief changes shape. At first, it's sharp and unbearable, but after a while, it becomes something you carry quietly. Like an extra heartbeat, Max's voice had that same ache now, the sound of someone trying to hold everything together. And even though I wanted to fix it all, I knew I couldn't. Some things, people have to mend themselves. Still, I couldn't stop thinking, what could have gone so wrong? Was it Lena? Was it the pressure of trying to build a life that looked perfect from the outside but was crumbling on the inside? Emily called early the next morning, her cheerful tone cutting through my fog. Mom, you sound tired. Everything okay? I told her about the call. There was a pause, and then she sighed softly. I'm glad he reached out, Mom. Maybe this is his way of finding his way back. I wanted to believe her. But mothers, we live in that space between hope and heartbreak, don't we? After we hung up, I made myself a cup of tea and stood by the window again. The sky was clearing, streaks of soft pink spreading across the horizon. It looked like a promise, faint, but there, and in that quiet morning light, I whispered to myself, maybe this time, it's the beginning of something healing. A few days later, Emily dropped by. She always did that, without warning, carrying the sunshine of her smile and the smell of freshly baked muffins. You weren't going to answer my text, she said teasingly, so I brought reinforcements. We sat in the kitchen, the same spot where I used to pack her lunchboxes and tie her braids before school. She poured us both coffee and leaned on the counter. So, tell me more about Max, I sighed, tracing the rim of my mug. He sounded small, like the world finally caught up to him. She nodded, eyes soft. Lena's been posting those picture-perfect moments again, new outfits, new vacations. But it all feels too curated, you know? Like something's off. I smiled faintly. You've always been better than me at reading between the lines. Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You've always wanted to see the best in people, Mom. Even when they didn't deserve it. Her words hit me gently, like a truth I'd known all along but never wanted to face. Maybe I had been too forgiving, waiting for everyone to do right by me, without ever asking if I deserved better. I told Emily about the things Max said, the exhaustion in his voice, the cracks between his words. She listened quietly, eyes glistening. "You know," she said after a pause, "sometimes people only come home when they're hurting. But at least they still know where home is." That sentence stayed with me long after she left. I watched her drive away, her taillights fading into the afternoon haze. The house grew quiet again, the kind of quiet that feels too big, and in that silence, I thought of Max, my boy, my stubborn, beautiful boy, and whispered into the empty air, "You'll always have a home here, no matter how far you drift." It was just after sunset when the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer. I was in the middle of watering my peace lilies, lost in thought. But something in me hesitated, the kind of instinct only a mother knows. When I looked at the screen, my heart skipped. Lena. For a moment, I froze. My first thought was that something had happened to Max. I pressed accept before my mind could even catch up. "Hello?" I said softly, "Hi. Mrs. Ellington." Her voice came, quieter than I'd ever heard it. I hope it's not a bad time." I could tell she'd been crying. Her usually sharp tone was replaced by something fragile. "No, dear," I replied gently. "It's never a bad time." There was silence. Just the faint sound of her breathing and maybe a distant sob. Then she said, "I think Max told you we'd been having some problems." I sat down slowly. "He mentioned things weren't easy lately." Her voice cracked. "It's worse than that. We barely talk anymore. He's angry all the time, and I don't even know why. He says I don't understand him, but I'm trying. I really am." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to protect my son. Another part of me wanted to comfort this young woman who sounded so lost. "Marriage is hard, Lena," I finally said. "It's two people trying to grow without growing apart. Sometimes one grows faster than the other." She sniffled quietly. "He keeps things bottled up, and I don't know how to reach him." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Max has always been like that. He gets that from his father. Dan used to hold things inside until they spilled out in quiet ways." Lena didn't speak for a moment. Then she whispered, "I just don't want to lose him." I felt my heart soften. "Then don't fight him, Lena. Listen to him. And when you can't fix it, just love him anyway." When the call ended, I sat there for a long while, phone still warm in my hand. Maybe this was how healing began, not with big gestures, but with fragile calm. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I kept replaying Lena's trembling voice in my mind, the way her words cracked as if her heart was breaking. It's strange how even after all that pain, all that distance, I couldn't stop myself from caring. Maybe once you've loved someone as family, you can't unlearn it, even when they hurt you. I sat up, turned on the little lamp by my bedside, and opened the old brown diary that Dan had given me on our 25th anniversary. The pages were worn and yellowed now, carrying the scent of old ink and time. I picked up my pen and began to write, as if I were speaking to him again. "Dan," I wrote, "you'd probably laugh at me if you saw me tonight. After everything that's happened, I still can't harden my heart. Max called last week, and now Lena too. Both lost, both trying to find something I'm not sure they even understand yet. Maybe they're finally learning that love isn't about what you take, it's about what you give without keeping score." The words came slowly, mixed with quiet tears. "You always told me, Grace, don't let bitterness steal your gentleness. I've tried, Dan. Lord knows I've tried. But sometimes, being kind feels like bleeding from 1,000 small cuts. I paused, letting the ink dry as a soft breeze came through the half-open window. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, and a train passed far in the distance, just like it used to when Dan would hold my hand on the porch swing. Do you think, I continued, our boy will ever come back to me, not just with a phone call, but with his heart? I'd give anything for that. I closed the diary, pressing my hand against it for a moment. Good night, Dan, I whispered into the quiet room. I hope you're watching over him. Over us. The house was still, but somehow it didn't feel empty anymore. For the first time in a long while, I felt like my heart had spoken, and perhaps, just perhaps, someone had heard. Morning sunlight spilled gently across the kitchen table, warming the cup of coffee I hadn't touched yet. I was staring at the garden outside, the same patch of earth Dan and I had planted years ago. The roses were blooming again, stubbornly, beautifully, as if they refused to give up no matter how many storms came their way. Maybe there was a lesson there. Just as I was lost in thought, I heard the front door open softly. Only one person had the habit of letting herself in that quietly. Mom? Came Emily's voice, soft but full of warmth. In here, sweetheart, I said. She appeared in the doorway with her hair pulled into a loose bun, holding a small paper bag. I brought muffins. Blueberry, your favorite. I smiled. You didn't have to, honey. She shrugged lightly. I wanted to. You sounded tired when we talked last night. I gestured for her to sit, and she poured herself some coffee before studying me carefully, like nurses do. So, she said gently, you spoke to Lena. I sighed. I did. She sounded broken. And part of me wanted to tell her she deserved it after everything she's done. But I just couldn't. Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's because you have the softest heart of anyone I know. You don't do hate, Mom. You never have. I gave a small laugh. Maybe that's my flaw. No, she said firmly. That's your strength. For a while, we just sat there, sipping coffee, listening to the clock tick. Then she said quietly, you know, maybe this is their turning point. Sometimes it takes losing what matters most to finally wake up. I looked at her and smiled faintly. Maybe so. But I don't want to sit here waiting for people to realize my worth anymore. Emily nodded. Then don't. Live your life, Mom. For you. Her words lingered in the air like a promise, or maybe a beginning. As she stood to leave, she kissed my forehead. You always taught me forgiveness isn't weakness. Maybe it's time to forgive yourself too. WG. The day passed quietly after Emily left. I spent the afternoon tending to my plants, humming old songs that Dan used to sing when we cooked together on Sundays. The world outside felt calm again, no phone calls, no tears, just the rhythm of my own breathing and the hum of the ceiling fan. But as twilight settled over Willow Creek, my phone lit up on the counter. When I glanced at it, my heart skipped. Max. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at his name. My fingers trembled slightly before I answered. Hi, Mom, he said, his voice low and hesitant. Not the usual hurried tone, not the distant politeness I'd grown used to. This time, there was something different. Something raw. Hello, sweetheart, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. How are you? A long silence followed. Then he exhaled. Not great. I've been thinking a lot. I leaned against the counter, my heart thudding. About what? About you. About Lena. About everything, he said quietly. I know I haven't been a good son. I've said things I shouldn't have. I let her push me away from you, and I didn't stop it. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't interrupt. I just listened, the way mothers do when every word feels like a fragile gift. He continued, when Dad died, you held us together. You were always there for me, Mom. And I repaid that by making you feel invisible. I don't even know how to fix that. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Oh, Max, fixing it starts with what you're doing right now. He didn't speak for a while. I could hear his breathing, shaky and real. Lena told me she called you, he finally said. She said you were kind. Even after everything. She's hurting too, I said softly. Sometimes, people lash out from pain they don't understand. He sighed deeply. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Mom. Truly sorry. I closed my eyes, letting the moment sink in. I know, my love. I've been waiting a long time to hear that. And for the first time in years, the silence. That night, after I hung up the phone, I sat quietly by the window, the one that overlooks Willow Creek's sleepy streets. The air was cool, carrying that familiar scent of rain-soaked earth and lilacs from Mrs. Carter's garden next door. For the first time in a long while, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel, peace. The conversation with Max kept replaying in my mind. Every word, every pause, every trembling apology. I had prayed for that moment so many times, whispering into the silence of my empty kitchen, hoping somehow he'd hear me. And tonight. He finally did. I thought about Lena too. How life changes people, how pain reshapes love into something unrecognizable. I didn't hate her, not anymore. Because I realized forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of what you can't change. I looked over at Dan's old chair, the one I still couldn't part with. You'd be proud of him, Dan, I whispered. He's finding his way back. The house felt different, warmer, softer. Maybe because, for once, my heart wasn't carrying the ache of yesterday. Maybe because forgiveness had finally taken root where sorrow used to live. As I turned off the lamp and headed to bed, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The same tired eyes, the same gentle smile, but something had shifted. I didn't look invisible anymore. Sometimes, the call you never expect is the one that brings you home again.